Nowadays, a lot of AAA games are falling short of the expectations. That's why in this video, I'm going to talk about 10 amazing AA games that are a blast and even at the level of some fully fledged AAA titles.
Home sweet home.
Evil West. Evil West is one of those games that just comes out of nowhere and hits you with a sucker punch of pure, unadulterated fun. It's not trying to win any awards for storytelling or reinvent the wheel, it's just there to be a wild ride. Imagine this, you're a cowboy in the Old West, but instead of dealing with your run-of-the-mill outlaws, you're out there hunting down bloodthirsty vampires and other nasty supernatural creatures. And you've got a bunch of cool weapons and gadgets to do it with. It's like someone took Van Helsing, threw in a heavy dose of Clint Eastwood, and cranked the dial up to 11. The combat is chunky and satisfying in a way that you don't always get from the big AAA titles. It's got that old school feel where every punch, kick, and shot has weight. You've got this insane mix of gunplay and melee attacks that makes you feel like you're in some sort of bizarre Wild West street brawl with monsters. And yeah, it's kind of goofy at times, but that's exactly what makes it great. It's got that campy B-movie vibe that you don't see much of these days. The game knows exactly what it is, and it leans into that with no shame whatsoever. And let's talk about the setting for a second. The game doesn't hold back on the visuals. The environments are beautifully crafted, blending the dusty, desolate feel of the Old West with a gothic, almost Lovecraftian horror aesthetic. It's a looker, but not in the way you'd expect from a game that doesn't have that AAA budget. It's got charm and style, two things that sometimes get lost in bigger titles trying too hard to check every box. But what really makes Evil West stand out is how unapologetically fun it is. It's one of those games that reminds you why you started playing video games in the first place, just pure entertainment without all the fluff. And that's why it deserves a spot on this list. If you're into action games with a unique twist, give it a go. It might just surprise you. Call of Juarez Gunslinger. Call of Juarez Gunslinger is like a shot of whiskey on a cold night. It's got a kick to it, but it warms you up in all the right ways. This is a game that doesn't try to be anything it's not. It's a lean, mean gunslinging machine that serves up a good old-fashioned Western experience, but with a twist. The story is told through the eyes of Silas Greaves, a grizzled bounty hunter who's spinning his tales of adventure to a bunch of folks in a saloon.
Doing a job in their own damn hometown.
And let me tell you, Silas is not the most reliable narrator. 1 minute you're shooting down a posse of bandits, the next you're up against a whole army, because Silas suddenly remembers things differently. It's a storytelling style that makes the game feel like you're in on the joke, like you're sitting there with Silas, a whiskey in hand, listening to him embellish his tall tales. The gameplay itself is slick, fast, and doesn't waste your time. You're a cowboy with a revolver, a rifle, and a bad attitude, and that's really all you need. The shooting mechanics are tight, and the game just feels good in that old school arcadey way. The duels, they're highlight tense, sweaty palm showdowns where a single misstep means staring at the wrong end of a bullet. You feel every draw, every trigger pull. It's almost like you're back in the old arcade days, but with a modern twist. And visually, for a game that didn't have the deepest pockets, it's downright gorgeous. The cel-shaded style gives it a unique look that stands out from the crowd of hyper-realistic shooters. It's bright, bold, and captures the essence of those spaghetti westerns we all love. Plus, the soundtrack is pure western gold, adding that extra layer of grit and tension to every gunfight. What makes Call of Juarez Gunslinger truly shine is how much heart it has. It's clear the devs were having a blast making this game, and that joy translates directly to the player. It's one of those rare gems that flies under the radar but leaves a lasting impression. Whether you're a fan of westerns or just looking for a game that knows how to have fun, this one's worth every penny, and trust me, once you've drawn against the likes of Jesse James or Billy the Kid, you'll be itching for another showdown. Disco Elysium. Disco Elysium is one of those games that grabs you by the collar, looks you dead in the eyes, and says, "Are you ready for this?" It's like if a detective novel got hammered at a dive bar, had an existential crisis, and decided to reinvent itself. You're playing as a detective who wakes up in a trashed hotel room, hungover and clueless about, well, everything including who you are. And that's the first hint that this game isn't gonna hold your hand.
The young woman raises a cigarette to her lips.
What makes Disco Elysium so damn special is how it pulls you into its world. Ravako, the city where all this madness takes place, feels like it has a pulse. It's broken, tired, full of people who are just trying to get by, but man, it's alive.
A man in his late 20s stands behind.
The game doesn't shove you down a path, it throws you in and says, figure it out, detective every conversation, every decision big or small matters. It feels like the city is watching you, waiting to see how you'll handle the mess. But here's the kicker, it's not just about solving a murder. Sure, there's a body hanging from a tree, and yeah, you're a detective, so it's kind of your job to figure out what happened, but the game isn't just about that. It's about who you are or who you want to be while you're doing it. Your skills aren't just stats, they're voices in your head, each with its own personality, constantly trying to influence your decisions. You want to be a hard-boiled cop? A sensitive artist type? A complete train wreck? The game says, go for it. It's like a fever dream crossed with a dark comedy, but with a heart that genuinely cares about what it's trying to say, and the choices, they're not just do this or that. They're complicated, morally gray, and they make you think, really think about what kind of person you're becoming in this messed up world.
The body was behind the building, right? How do we get there?
And let's talk about the art style. It's like a painting that's come to life, all muted colors, dripping in atmosphere, and filled with these haunting, surreal details that stick with you. The soundtrack too is perfect. It's moody, it's melancholic, and it fits the tone like a glove. If you're looking for a game that's gonna hold your attention, make you laugh, maybe even make you a little uncomfortable, but in a way that makes you want to dive even deeper, Disco Elysium isn't. It's a game that's unapologetically itself, that challenges the very idea of what a game can be. Forget about just ticking boxes or leveling up, this is about finding yourself, losing yourself, and maybe finding something new in the process.
Hangs out by the waterlock, carving up a generous serving of salami.
Hi-Fi Rush. Hi-Fi Rush is like stumbling into a party where everyone's dancing to the beat of their own drum and suddenly you're the star of the show. This game is a rhythm-based action game that doesn't just play with music, it's built around it. Imagine a world where every attack, dodge, and move is synced perfectly to a killer soundtrack. It's like if a rhythm game and a stylish action game had a wild, neon-soaked baby. You play as Chai, a character who's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder. Literally, he's got a robotic heart and a love for music. He's thrown into a world where he's fighting against a corrupt mega corporation, all while grooving to a soundtrack that ranges from pumping rock to smooth jazz. The music isn't just background noise, it's the heartbeat of the game. Your actions are synced to the rhythm, which makes everything feel dynamic and connected. Miss a beat, and you might find yourself on the receiving end of a beatdown. The combat is where Hi-Fi Rush truly shines. It's fast, it's flashy, and it feels incredibly satisfying. There's a rhythm to it, but it's not just about hitting notes, it's about blending your moves in time with the music to pull off these stylish combos. It's like dancing with your enemies, and it's a blast. You get to pull off all sorts of crazy moves, from basic attacks to over-the-top special abilities, and it all flows together in this beautiful, chaotic symphony. The visuals are a treat for the eyes, too. The game has this vibrant comic book style art that pops off the screen. It's full of personality with characters and environments that are just dripping with style. The animation is smooth and energetic, matching the pulse of the soundtrack. And speaking of the soundtrack, it's not just a collection of tracks slapped together. It's curated to fit the game's mood perfectly, making every fight, every exploration feel like it's part of a much bigger rhythm. What really sets Hi-Fi Rush apart is how it makes you feel like you're part of a living, breathing music video. The game's full of humor and charm, and it doesn't take itself too seriously, which makes it even more enjoyable. It's a game that's meant to be fun, to make you tap your feet and grin as you pull off some ridiculously cool moves.
You don't scare us.
If you're into action games that bring a fresh twist to the genre, Hi-Fi Rush is definitely worth your time. It's got a beat that'll get your blood pumping in a style that'll leave you with a smile on your face. It's a rhythm game with an attitude, and it's a blast from start to finish, so if you're looking for something that's a bit different and a whole lot of fun, this one's definitely worth checking out.
Long ago.
Lost in Random. Lost in Random feels like stepping into a darkly whimsical fairy tale where chance and fate play the lead roles. The game's got this enchanting Tim Burton-esque vibe that's hard to ignore, with a world that's both charming and a little eerie, the kind of place where anything can happen, and often does. You follow the story of Even, a young girl on a quest to rescue her sister, Odd, from the clutches of a sinister queen who controls everything with dice. Yep, dice. The entire world of Lost in Random is built around this concept of randomness and chance. Every decision, every twist in the story feels like it's being influenced by the roll of a die, which gives the game a really unique, unpredictable feel. The gameplay mixes up action and strategy in a way that feels fresh. You've got a cool deck building mechanic where you collect cards that give you different abilities, you roll your die, and then use the cards you've drawn to pull off various attacks or actions. It's kind of like blending a board game with an action RPG, and it works really well. There's something incredibly satisfying about rolling the dice, pulling out a card, and then seeing how the randomness plays out in real time. Visually, the game is a treat. It's got this storybook aesthetic with detailed, hand-drawn art that makes every scene feel like a page from a fantastical book. The character designs are quirky and memorable, from Even's determined expression to the whimsical, often creepy inhabitants of Random. The environments are full of little details that make the world feel alive and magical, and the animations bring everything to life with a smooth, fluid motion that's a joy to watch. The story, while whimsical, has some real depth to it. It's about more than just rescuing your sister, it's about confronting the randomness of life and finding your own path in a world where nothing is certain. The dialogue is full of clever writing and touches of dark humor, which keeps things engaging and adds a lot of personality to the characters in the world. One of the standout features is how Lost in Random makes you think about the role of chance in your life. It's not just a game about rolling dice, it's a game that asks you to consider how randomness shapes your choices and your destiny. And while it's definitely a game that plays with those ideas, it never feels preachy or heavy-handed. If you're into games with a unique style, engaging mechanics, and a story that's as thought-provoking as it is enchanting, Lost in Random is worth diving into. It's a charming, whimsical adventure that'll keep you on your toes and make you think twice about the role of fate in your own life. Plus, it's just a lot of fun to explore.
Had been taken away from her, and in all that time.
Scarlet Nexus. Scarlet Nexus is like an anime fever dream where you're battling grotesque monsters with your brain power, and it's every bit as thrilling as it sounds. The game throws you into a futuristic world where psychic abilities are the norm and a mysterious threat known as the Others is wreaking havoc. You get to pick between two main characters, Yudo and Kasan, each with their own unique set of abilities and storylines. Starting off, you're greeted with a vibrant cityscape and a soundtrack that gets your adrenaline pumping. The combat is a blast, imagined telekinetically hurling objects at enemies and then dashing in for a flashy close-up attack. It's fast, it's smooth, and it feels incredibly satisfying when you pull off a well-timed combo. The blend of psychic powers and physical attacks keeps things exciting, and you'll find yourself experimenting with different strategies to see what works best. The story is where Scarlet Nexus really shines. It's not just about punching monsters, it delves into some pretty deep themes about memory and identity. You'll be piecing together the past while fighting off monstrous foes, and the dual perspective of Yudo and Kasan adds layers to the narrative. It's like solving a mystery while your brain is constantly juggling psychic battles. The characters are memorable, with backstories that make them feel real and relatable. Graphically, the game's anime-inspired art style is both striking and vibrant. The character designs are stylish, and the futuristic environments are full of detail. The others are visually unique, adding a touch of the bizarre to the already strange world. The animation during combat and cutscenes is smooth, making everything from a simple attack to a dramatic story moment look fantastic. If you're into action-packed RPGs with a cool psychic twist and a story that makes you think Scarlet Nexus is worth diving into, it's got the high-energy combat and compelling narrative to keep you hooked from start to finish. And if you're like me and enjoy a game that mixes up its gameplay and story in intriguing ways, you'll find Scarlet Nexus to be a refreshing and engaging experience.
Oh yeah, there's a hawk in the sky.
Atomic Heart. Atomic Heart feels like a fever dream set in an alternate Soviet Union where things have gone wildly off the rails. Picture this, you're in a dystopian 1950s USSR, and instead of the usual Cold War drama, you're dealing with rogue robots, mutant creatures, and all sorts of bizarre science experiments gone wrong. It's like someone took the classic Soviet era and threw it into a blender with a crazy sci-fi horror movie. From the get-go, Atomic Heart grabs you with its eerie atmosphere. The environment is richly detailed, from the creepy, abandoned research facilities to the overgrown, desolate landscapes. It's got this surreal, unsettling vibe that makes every corner feel like it's hiding something sinister. The visuals are pretty striking, with a mix of retro-futuristic design and grimy industrial decay. It's like wandering through an old Soviet dreamscape that's been twisted into something out of a nightmare. The combat is intense and varied. You've got a range of weapons and abilities at your disposal, and you'll need every bit of them to survive the onslaught of enemies. The melee combat is surprisingly satisfying, with a variety of weapons you can upgrade and customize. The shooting mechanics are solid too, with a range of firearms that feel weighty and impactful. The enemies you face are all sorts of weird and creepy, from robotic monstrosities to grotesque mutants, each requiring a different strategy to take down. The story is a mix of bizarre and intriguing. You play as a KGB officer investigating a research facility gone dark, and the deeper you get, the stranger things become. It's got that classic what the heck is going on vibe, with a narrative that unfolds through environmental storytelling and scattered notes. It's not a straightforward plot, but it's engaging in its own chaotic way. And the characters you meet along the way are as twisted as the world you're exploring, adding a layer of dark humor and unpredictability. One of the coolest things about Atomic Heart is how it blends survival horror with action and exploration. It's not just about shooting things, you're scavenging for resources, solving puzzles, and dealing with unexpected threats. The game keeps you on your toes with its constantly shifting tone and pacing. If you're into games that mix surreal environments with intense combat and a weird, twisted story, Atomic Heart is definitely worth checking out. It's got a unique vibe that's hard to put into words, and it delivers a fresh take on the first-person shooter genre with its eerie setting and unpredictable gameplay.
That was so surreal.
Life is Strange. Life is Strange is like diving into a gripping indie film where your choices really matter. You play as Max Caulfield, a high school student who discovers she can rewind time. Sounds pretty wild, right? But what's cool is that the game doesn't just use this power for flashy effects, it dives into some deep emotional storytelling. You start in this small, picturesque town called Arcadia Bay, which at first seems charming but soon reveals it's got its share of mysteries. As Max, you're not just dealing with typical teen drama, you're also uncovering some pretty dark secrets about the town and its people. What makes Life is Strange stand out is its storytelling. The writing feels genuine, capturing the ups and downs of teenage life in a way that hits home.
Then the butterfly flew in, and I took a photo.
Max's time rewinding power isn't just a fun trick, it's a central part of how the story unfolds. You'll find yourself constantly thinking about how your choices impact the world and the characters around you.
No way!
Don't ever touch me again, freak!
Even small decisions can lead to surprising outcomes, which keeps you on your toes. The characters are another win for the game. They're relatable and well written with their own quirks and backstories. Max's best friend Chloe is a standout, and their dynamic feels real. It's like you're watching a drama unfold between friends who feel like they could be people you know. Visually, the game has this cool, artsy vibe that fits its story perfectly. It's not the most realistic graphics, but it has a unique style that adds to the dreamlike quality of the game. The soundtrack is also great, filled with indie tracks that really set the mood and enhance the emotional beats of the game. If you're into games that focus heavily on story and character development, Life is Strange is definitely worth your time. It's more than just a game about time travel, it's about the impact of your choices and the people you meet along the way. It's a beautiful, emotional experience that stays with you long after you've finished playing.
He's in there hurt and I can't get him out.
Alone in the Dark. Alone in the Dark is like a nostalgic trip back to the classic survival horror days, but with a modern twist that makes it feel fresh. It's got that old school vibe, but with updated visuals and gameplay that keep things interesting. You're dropped into a creepy, rundown mansion filled with all sorts of eerie surprises. The game plays with atmosphere in a way that keeps you on edge, dark corners, creaky floors, and unexpected jump scares. It's that kind of horror where the tension builds slowly, making you question what's lurking around every corner. The story is a mix of classic horror tropes with some unique elements thrown in. You're investigating a series of bizarre events, and the deeper you go, the weirder things get. The plot has a bit of a detective twist, with you piecing together clues and unraveling a mystery that's both unsettling and intriguing. What I love about Alone in the Dark is how it blends old school survival horror with some modern mechanics. The inventory system, for instance, is a nod to the classics, but is streamlined enough to be user-friendly. The combat is a bit of a mixed bag. Sometimes it's satisfying, other times it can feel a bit clunky. But that's part of the charm, right? It's not trying to be a slick, polished experience. It's more about creating that classic horror atmosphere where you're constantly on edge. The visuals are a big step up from the original, with a lot of attention to detail in creating that creepy, atmospheric setting. The lighting effects and shadows play a huge role in making the environment feel tense and foreboding. It's got that I don't want to turn the lights off kind of vibe, which is exactly what you want from a horror game. If you're into survival horror and enjoy a bit of nostalgia mixed with modern elements, Alone in the Dark is definitely worth checking out. It's got its quirks, but it's all part of the experience. It's a great reminder of why we love horror games in the first place: the atmosphere, the suspense, and the thrill of not knowing what's around the next corner.
Who are you? What have you done to...
Robocop Rogue City. Robocop Rogue City is like a love letter to fans of the classic Robocop films, with a modern spin that brings the gritty cyberpunk world of Detroit back to life. If you've ever wanted to step into the metal boots of the iconic cyborg cop, this game is pretty much as close as you're going to get. You're thrust into the role of Robocop, tasked with cleaning up the streets of Detroit, which are as corrupt and dangerous as ever. The game does a solid job of capturing that dystopian, lawless vibe that the movies are known for. From the moment you start, you're hit with that classic Robocop aesthetic: dark alleys, over-the-top criminals, and a lot of techie, futuristic gear. The story is classic Robocop fare. There's corruption, crime, and a lot of moral dilemmas. You'll be diving into a narrative that's both action-packed and thought-provoking. It's not just about gunning down bad guys, though. There's plenty of that. It's also about uncovering layers of corruption and making choices that impact how the story unfolds. Gameplay-wise, Robocop Rogue City is a mix of first-person shooting and detective work. The shooting mechanics are pretty satisfying with a range of futuristic weapons and gadgets at your disposal. There's also a bit of strategy involved, as you'll need to manage your resources and make smart use of your abilities to take down enemies and solve crimes. One thing that stands out is the game's attention to detail. The environments are packed with little nods to the Robocop universe, and the character models and animations capture the look and feel of the original films.
Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
It's like being part of a Robocop movie complete with all the high-tech gadgets and over-the-top action. If you're a fan of the Robocop series or just enjoy a good, gritty action game, Robocop Rogue City is definitely worth a shot. It brings a lot of the charm and excitement of the original films into a modern gaming experience. Plus, it's always fun to take on the role of a cyborg law enforcer and kick some criminal butt in a futuristic city. Stray. Stray definitely deserves a recommendation. It's so much fun to explore the world from the viewpoint of a cat, and the developers took this concept and designed it to near perfection. Starting at the animations of your feline character, how you can interact with other cats, the inhabitants of this world and the world in general, and how everything is structured. You can feel that a lot of love and work was put into every little detail of the game to allow you to truly experience how it feels to explore the world as a cat. If you are on the lookout for a different kind of adventure, you should definitely give Stray a go. Stray is essentially a short adventure game in which the player needs to figure out things via puzzles and dialogue. Whilst this is fun and entertaining, I felt like the game was a bit too short for my liking. It took me around 6 hours to complete my first playthrough, and I spent a fair amount of time discovering hidden areas and exploring the beautifully crafted levels. I personally enjoyed the fact that I couldn't understand what the robots were saying without the help from B12, so sometimes I felt kind of alienated because I didn't understand the language but was guided by instincts and simple motions, which makes sense because I was controlling a cat, right? All zones are beautiful and low-key stunning in their own way. From the dangerous sewers to the wonderful small and bigger urban eras in which the dystopian cyberpunk style shines a lot. The story itself is quite simple, but the combination of the story, gameplay, and atmosphere was intriguing enough to keep me going. Also, the fact that this game feels pretty unique was something that kept me interested as well. One of the coolest things about Stray is that you can do things a cat would do as well: push objects to the ground, jump to places you shouldn't usually jump to, make robots fall because you walk between their legs and meow whenever you like. Well, that was all for this video. I will see you in the next one. Have a good day.